Hi guys, welcome to the presentation for Faustino Rivero, a Rioja family producer that's been dating back to the 19th century, 1899 to be exact. And this presentation is here to guide you through the winery, the family, the understanding of Rioja, what it means to us in the UK, and helping us sell our wines to the public and in them enjoying Rioja, and for us to know a little bit about it. So if we want to go away and buy a bottle ourselves, we know what we're drinking. So let's go into the family itself. So Faustino Rivero date back, as I said, to the 19th century. So they've been producing wine for well over 110 years. And now they're a family that are into their fifth generation. So Manuel and Jorge, the two in their fifth generation, one produces on the production side, one works on the sales side and the export side. So a really good family feel. But what they've done tremendously well over those years is keep the techniques of what they learned back in the 19th century in the present wine today. So what you buy effectively, or what we present or what we sell to our customers, is effectively authentic Rioja wine that has traditions that go back those generations, through those 5 generations that we see today. It means a lot because it means that actually what we taste today is what we're seeing as a traditional Rioja, but with the help of techniques and machinery and technology, means that that's in there to gain the consistency of a wine and to make sure year on year we're getting the best out we can. But we don't want to take away the core factor of what we want to sell and what we want to produce and what we want people to feel and taste when they're trying our Rioja. So it's really important that that stays within it. But yes, we want to make sure that all the techniques and we're producing the best Rioja we possibly can do. So the winery moved. Back into wine as a brand in about the 60s. So Bodegas Rivero came about, and this is an area where you can see the chap there sitting on one of the tanks that's obviously getting the wine ready. And what he would literally do would be put the hose pipe in and allow people to come up with their plastic containers, and they will fill their containers up for the family, for the week, the month, whatever it might be, and they would go away. But the Rivero family found that there was a market for a product, and their first product they produced under a brand was called Chiton. So it's kind of like an English name you wouldn't really want to call, but in Spain it didn't, obviously it didn't have that terminology, so Chiton was established as their first brand. And since then it evolved into actually realizing that the Rivero name, Bodegas Rivero, was pretty important to the family, and they wanted to make sure they had a stamp of approval. So the Rivero, Faustino Rivero and Faustino Rivero Lucilia is what happened in as they move forward in producing their wine and making sure their stamp of approval was on it. So here's a map of Spain. And it's interesting to know, most people know Rioja comes from Spain, but really don't know the part where it's from. So we'll put that argument to bed, and it's in the northern part. So landing at Bilbao airport, jumping a taxi, travel for an hour and 15 south, and you hit Rioja. Travel for a couple of hours and you'll hit the main part of Rioja, where most of the wineries will come from. There's about 600-700 wineries within Rioja. Faustino Rivero sit as number 2 at the moment in Rioja production and doing very, very well from it. So what makes Rioja great is the laws came in to say they limited the number of grapes on a vine. So they said that the energy that vine produces, if it's going to less grapes, it's going to produce better quality. And also they told the wineries the harvest that you have and the number of vines that you have, we're going to limit what you can call Rioja. So when they restrict the number of grapes that actually can go into Rioja wine. So as a winery, you're never going to discard your best. You're always going to discard maybe that area didn't grow as well, or maybe just didn't create the fruit that you wanted to. So that would go into table wine Spanish, meaning that the better quality would always stay with Rioja. So really important that Rioja punched above its weight for quality and always stayed within that. So it gave people reassurance when they're buying Rioja, you're buying good quality. When it came to Rioja, though, Rioja came about because of France, effectively, and a disease that started to hit their vines. So when the French went crazy because they're worried that they were going to lose all their wine, they started to graft from the vines that were there and plant in different countries. Hence why you see Spain, Italy, South America, Australia, New Zealand, all starting to produce wine. And so it meant that actually it allowed Spain to take on Rioja as a real premium part of wine. What's interesting from Rioja is on a menu, generally 1 in 3 Spanish bottles tend to be Rioja wine. But of that one bottle, it should cater for about 49% of the value that you make within Spanish wine. So people see it as quality. So people want to see Rioja on there. And when you buy it, they've got reassurance that actually there's value in that product for you and for the consumer. So they're willing to pay a bit more for Rioja because they know what they get is good quality. So that's why it's important that you associate Rioja and its history with us putting it on a wine menu. So what does it mean when we represent a winery like Faustino Rivero, and what does it look like when you look at a portfolio? So here's 5 wines that we present under the Faustino Rivero branding, and going from right to left, you've got Blanco Tempranillo Rosado. So that's a red, white and rosé Rioja. Then you move up to Crianza, and then you finish with what we call a Reserva. So Rioja, many people just think it's red and it's just Tempranillo. Well, actually, it can be Tempranillo with a touch of Garnacha, which is what we use in most of our wines. Graziano Garnacha is kind of the second grape that we will put into our red wines. But the one for me that stands out the most is white Rioja. It is fantastic, and at the moment, anyone that's looking to put a new exciting white on their menu have to think Rioja white. One, it's not very common and people will probably not be aware of it, but on the taste aspect of it, it is fantastic, and we'll talk with that in more detail. Joven wine, Joven, the word meaning young, means that these wines that are young, so this red, white, rosé, is only 0 to 3 months in production and in bottle. So when it goes into bottle, we want to get it out and we want to sell it as fast as we can because we want the fruit characteristic to come through on that wine. When we move up to a Crianza, there's a bit of age in there, and when we move up to Reserva, there's a bit more aging as well, and something we will talk in more detail. So I've got the 3 bottles of Joven there. The winemaker Rodrigo Espinosa is a fantastic guy, and since he's been with the winery back in 2003, has really been pushing the boundaries over what we do with Rioja to make sure we keep that tradition of what we like. We want that authentic there, but we also want to see an element of fruit and more characteristics come through. So it's very important that the tradition remains and the fruit drives that tradition. So what Rodrigo's been doing, who's Chilean he's not actually Spanish, he's Chilean, and he's worked with some of the leading Chilean producers and worked in America as well. But since coming over to Spain, he's really looked at how we can keep the year on year and vintage on vintage as consistent as possible, but really want people to be finding approachable Rioja, which we take in from back in 1899 to the techniques that we have today. So it was his goal and his idea and his passion that decided that Rioja has a wave to go with Faustino Rivero, and it's something that's growing really, really well. And the family group now have grown to be number 2 Rioja producer in the world. So these guys are doing something right because they're forever growing, doing really well. And Faustino Rivero, one of the leading brands within Spain today. So it shows it's working, and which is great to see. So let's look at Rioja and its aging properties and where it comes from. So 4 key characteristics: Joven, Crianza, Reserva, Gran Reserva. What do they all mean, and what does that mean for Rioja wine? So Joven, meaning young, is no aging. We're going to put it into a bottle, we're going to release it, we want people to enjoy it young. We want that fresh, fruity characteristics to come through. No complexity with it, but just to be enjoyed on its own or with a light bit of food. When we move into Crianza, we're getting to something a bit more serious now. So we're looking at wine that's been aged for 12 months in barrel and a minimum of 2 years before release. So that's a barrel that will be 225 litres, and that'll be an oak barrel that will either be French or American oak. Generally more French than Americans used. But what we do with the Crianza is we take the same 2 grapes. So we take, for ours is Tempranillo and Garnacha, And what we will do with those grapes is we will put them into the barrel, and it just allows to take on a bit more complexity, a little bit different textures, but really like punch it. Crianza's the thing for me. I love it. Reserva. So now we're going to move up, same time in barrel, but this time we're going to allow it to settle for an extra year in bottle. What does that do? Well, it just allows, when you're in barrel, that it's working hard, it's taking all those developments on board, and with the wine it's becoming more textured, it's becoming different in style, and then it just allows that extra year to go into bottle and just allow to develop that little bit further. And it's quite amazing to think, when you try a Crianthum Reserva, what that 12 months in bottle can do for aging. But it's a little bit more textures, a little bit more in depth, there's a little bit more length, but it's truly fantastic. Gran Reserva, finally. So a Gran Reserva from Rioja will be a minimum of 5 years. So this is 2 years in barrel now. So there are wineries that do Gran Reserva. Faustino Rivero are not one of those ones that do it, because we see that actually growth within Rioja and what people want to try fits in with the Joven Crianza Reserva. Very few people go out looking for a Gran Reserva, and it's generally just a special occasion that someone will buy it. So on a menu, tends to be Reservas the highest level that you're going to go to, and that is the structure. There's quite a lot of Reserva that's sold in the UK market because people know Rioja and know the word Reserva, so that tends to work really well. So there's your aging properties of what you're going to see on Rioja wine. So Rioja Blanco, one of my favorite whites in the world at the moment. It is phenomenal, really good. So what does it look like? Aging 0 to 3 months, as we said about. Grape Viola, 100% Viola in this grape. And from the taste profile, we are getting, it's very aromatic. It's primary fruit aromas of apples and bananas, but there is a touch of citrus there as well. So that apple citrus note will come through, which is crisp and clean, very dry in style. And on the palate, it adds that refreshing finish that we really want to see punching through on a white wine. So it works really well with those customers that ask for and want New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. All right, it doesn't come with a green note and that cut grass aspect, but it really keeps that dry, crisp, like citrus, banana fruit that comes through really well, and it's so beautifully to drink. Summer evening, bang, you got your money for your buck there completely. Rioja Tempranillo, one of the key things that goes well. So Tempranillo by grape, #1 grape in Spain, works really well in Rioja. Again, aging 0 to 3 months. The grape, though, this time is Tempranillo Garnacha. So we're taking 85% Tempranillo, 15% Garnacha. The Tempranillo allows us to have that roundness, that nice soft, that elegant fruit, and the Garnacha is a bit like the backbone that will keep the structure together. So on the length, it will just keep it going through. When we talk about length, it's a bit more medium body. So it's not long length. We want to keep it young. We want to keep it fruity. There's a hint of licorice there, but only a touch. But it's really good red berry fruit. So we're looking at cherries and strawberries that will come through on the finish. Not strawberry as such, which you expect from the Rosado, but we're looking at that cherry fruit and that strawberry ripeness to come through that is very elegant, very easy and soft to drink. Rioja Rosado. Now for me, one of the things that should be looking to go on menus. It's phenomenal. It's got again, its aging is 0 to 3 months. Again, we're looking at Tempranillo Garnacha, but this time we've gone pale in colour. So the colour comes from the skins. So when you press a grape, all the juice is colourless. And when you take that juice and you put it in a container, you put the skins on top and you start to pump over. And as you pump over, you get into this nice, light, pale colour. And then once that's got, you take your skins away and you've got the colour you want. But what that will allow you to do from that elegant press that you've got of that rosé, you really create an elegant, light strawberry note that really follows well on keeping that red berry fruit there, but it's so light and so approachable that it works absolutely perfect on a glorious summer's evening. You can have it with food, but it's always my favorite on its own. I don't want to share it with anything or anyone. Crianza. So now we're going to get into a bit more serious side of Rioja. So this time now, we've mentioned we're going into a year in barrel and a year in bottle with this wine. We're keeping again Tempranillo Garnacha. We're keeping that 85-15% again for the same structure. But now we get more intense red cherry. So we're going to get a bit of a deeper color now when we pour. But this time we're looking for aromas of strawberry, raspberry, cranberry. But we want it to be a bit more ripe, a bit more balanced there, and a bit more texture. That's what we're looking for from the Criantha. So we do get this element of a touch of toffee, vanilla, a little bit of licorice now, but it's coming through more than what we see from the Tempranillo, the Joven. But we want it to be silky. We want it to have a structure that says, hey, do you know what you're tasting now and what's going to be lasting is that element of thinking that when you taste, it doesn't drop down here. It kind of sits back here somewhere. And it's like, wow, I can feel this texture and I can taste. And sometimes it's like putting a duvet in your mouth. It is absolutely elegant for me, Criantha. And that is for me, if you're ever going to look for a Criantha and you want some quality, but you don't want to be overpowered on the oak, Criantha is your thing completely, because it's a lovely balance of taking Joven and just turning up the volume a touch. Rioja Reserva. So now we're moving into the serious end of the spectrum here with wine. So Rioja Reserva, aged in barrel for 12 months. That can be French or American oak. But now we're going to let it settle in the bottle for 2 years. We're just going to allow it to just take its time a little bit more. And it's amazing the complexity that adds to it. So we're going to keep, again, Tempranillo Garnacha, the 85-15%. But on this now, we become a little bit more intense. There's a little bit more to the fruit characteristics we bring on. So therefore, this fruit does not just sit there, it adds a little bit more licorice. And it certainly brings on a little white spice in there as well. And a touch of smoke in the background. So all that comes together just by having having it in 12 months in barrel and 2 years in the bottle. But this time we're moving up a bit more serious. So we want to see an element of something meats, maybe a lovely Wagyu steak or a Sunday roast that would go really well. A beef roast with the gravy would go really well with something like a Reserva, because it just allows it to open up. When you open it up, also let it breathe a bit, because this bottle's been dead for 3 years. So we want to let it breathe a bit, and decanting is a possibility. And we want to make sure those aromas come out and be open to the length as well. It's a really good touch of Rioja. So there you go, guys. Faustino Rivero Usilia, Rioja traditions from a family business. So if you're looking to taste Rioja, what it was like in the days gone by, this is the product for you. Trust you enjoy, and good luck to your sales in the future for Rioja wine.